Shalom, shalom, Israel. It's your brother Benaiah Ben Israel, coming to you with a new series or new video series called Hebrew Color Countdown. That's Hebrew Color Countdown. Now, you may have wondered, what color were the ancient Israelites? You may have wondered, what color were the ancient Israelites? And if you ever wondered that, you may have looked at movies, you may have got a book, you may have looked at YouTube videos. And for the most part, we know that the videos today are whitewashed, that they could make a video about, or a movie about, Black Africa, Egypt, and, cast, all the characters will be cast as Europeans. So we know that there's a degree of whitewashing that takes place in, these movies today. Or maybe you've looked at some of these books that are out of mainstream today. Now, again, what we've noticed is that the books that were published after, I'd say like the 1900s, we found that the history in those books changed, right? So that the descriptions and the histories, 1900 and newer, say something, whereas the history in the books that were published in the 1800s and older, they say something totally different. So, depending on what books you may have read, you may have walked away with an incorrect understanding of what the Hebrew Israelites look like. Same thing goes for YouTube. I know that there's a couple of videos out there that try to refute the concept of we call it Black Hebrew Israelites. It's really Hebrew Israelites, but the concept of Black Hebrew Israelites. We have videos such as those put out by the Apologetics Ministry or Stephen Anderson, and according to those videos, there's no way that the Hebrew Israelites are black. They could be any color under the sun, but there is no way that the Hebrew Israelites are black. So with that in mind, I thought it'd be appropriate to put together a video series where we go through several references and strictly just read the references to see what the references say. So for the Hebrew Color Countdown, we're going to review 50 references. That's right. No, don't turn your YouTube off just yet. I'm going to break it up into two videos. If not, I may blow it out to 3. But in the first set of videos, I think we're going to try to do from 50 to 25 references, from 50 to 25. And for the most part, those references will focus on the Spanish Jews and the Portuguese Jews. Basically, the Jews that were part of the transatlantic slave trade. And then I think for the last part of the Color Countdown series, we'll focus on the Jews of Malabar, because I think that's a good case study as far as showing you the different types of Jews out there. So we'll have a lot of interesting things to cover on that. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get started. I want to try to keep these videos under 45 minutes or an hour at most. All right, so on to our first reference. So for our first reference, we have the Travels of Holland and the United Provinces. Now, just an FYI, I may not read every single title and author, and that's just in an effort to speed things up because we do have a lot of references to cover. However, I will at least show it somewhere on the screen. So if you want to make note of the references yourselves, just press pause, and then once you got the reference, you can keep moving. All right? This reference speaks to the Jews that are in Amsterdam. So, and I'm going to read quite a bit of this one because this one talks about the day in the life of the Jews, and then it gives a brief description of the Jews. So let's go ahead and get started. This day, being Saturday, June the 14th, is observed as the Jews' Sabbath, who are about 300 families seated in this town, most Portugals. A street they call the Jew Street. They have 3 synagogues there. I was this day at their synagogue from 9 to 12:30. Then they concluded. Return at 3 and continue until evening. They have 15 whom they call their Parnassus. These are the governors and judges. They have all white mantles of a kind of linen, but short. These they wear over their hats, which they never put off during all their being in church. They have 3 sorts of which perform their divine ordinances, their Levitical rites and ceremonies. The sons of Aaron, who represented the priests who carried their Alquran, the 5 books of Moses, covered with a cloth of gold and whereon were diverse little bell pendants placed in the form of a crown, which was fetched out of a little cabinet. This represented their tabernacle. The sons of Aaron are their predicates, and also read the books of Moses. The Levites sing the reading psalms of David in the tomb, and the Parnassuses appoint of the Israelites such to read as they think fit. The sons of Aaron and Levites have longer white robes than the rest. Here in this congregation, no good order, no great zeal, and devotion here appearing. Much time is spent singing and talking. We went hence to an Englishman and his wife, lately turned Jew, as it said, merely to enrich themselves. Very obstinate and ignorant both. He is a merchant of tobacco. 'Tis said his wife, being a handsome woman, was a courtesan in London. They deny all the New Testament. Their men most black, full of hair, and insatiably given unto women. Okay, well, just to reiterate, in this first reference, the Portuguese Jews living in Amsterdam were identified as most black. Most black, okay? All right, let's go to our next quote here. And I'm just going to start midway here. You can see the reference off to the left. And midway down, you'll see where it says, King John II in 1492 expelled all the Jews. This is all the Jews in Portugal. All the Spanish Jews in Portugal. That's a key note here. But he expelled all the Spanish Jews in Portugal to the island of St. Thomas, which he had discovered in 1471, and to other Portuguese settlements on the continent of Africa. Now, just a quick note here, if you've taken the time to look at any of the other videos, you know that we brought out references to show you that, in fact, that the Portuguese and some of these other European nations actually expelled their Jews and placed them on the west coast of Africa. And in particular, these were Jews. These were Israelites from the tribe of Judah, from the tribe of Benjamin, or from the tribe of Levi. So these are they that were placed on the west coast of Africa. But let's finish this reference, and it says, and from these banished Jews, I'm going to say it again, and from these banished Jews, the black Portuguese, as they are called, and the Jews in Luanga. For clarity here, it says the black Portuguese, as they are called, and the Jews in Luanga. So the takeaway here is that these Portuguese Jews, or these Spanish Jews that were exiled from Portugal, are black. And of course, the Spanish word for black is Negroes. So there's also some interesting connections there as well. All right, so let's go over to our next reference, and here's the title. Give you a moment to look that over, and I'm just going to go ahead and turn the page. Let's go to our next reference on page 118, and it reads, in regard to the human race, it has been shown abundantly and historically that each of the external differences often ceases to be characteristics. Thus, the black color is found not only in individuals, as the black Jews of Portugal, but in the tribes as Barcaris on the Red Sea, whose hair and character are perfectly Semitic. All right, let's read that just one more time. This is the last sentence. It says, thus the black color is found not only in individuals as the black Jews of Portugal. So again, this is pointing out that the Jews in Portugal were black. So anyone that says in their videos that the Jews could be anything but black, obviously hadn't read these references, because this was the understanding in the books back in the 1800s. Okay. All right. So we've got that reference. Let's go to our next reference. If you ever thought like I did that the African Americans or blacks we were the cursed seed of Ham. It's like, you blacks are the cursed seed of Ham. Well, there's a reason for that. And this is another nugget of information. So what we'll look at in this reference is that thought originated or perpetuated by the Pope during the transatlantic slave trade. So in our previous videos, in our other series, we showed that the Pope authorized the transatlantic slave trade. And that's what kicked things off, right? And that was also during the time of the persecution of the Jews. And we saw that in our previous series that all that's related. So the whole persecution of the Jews and the transatlantic slave trade, that's all related because those people were Jews. But what we find here is that when we read this reference, and this is about the Pope Pius V, and it reads, Pius V, by nature a sinister ecclesiastic, delighting in the persecution, who treated Jews as the cursed children of Ham. Let me read that one again. This is Pope Pius V, by nature a sinister ecclesiastic, delighting in persecution, who treated Jews as the cursed children of Ham. So if you ever wonder where that thought came from, that the black Jews were the cursed seed of Ham, this reference points it out to you. And just to read a little bit more, just kind of get context, it says, this Pope was succeeded by Gregory the Eighth, I believe it's the 8th, who had been skillfully trained to fanaticism by the Jesuits and the Theretine monks. As regards Jews, Gregory was a most consistent follower of the cruelty of his predecessor. So this is just an FYI, an extra reference I threw in there, just so that you can understand where the thought of the cursed children of Ham came from as far as being applied to the Jews. Okay. All right, and we're just going to read this reference to, you may be thinking, wait a minute, you're throwing extra references in there. This is going to be over 50. Well, truth be told, it may be over 50. And I actually thought, just kind of sidebar here, but I actually thought that, what greater proof than to lay out 50 references that point out that the Jews were black? You can't really refute that, right? But if I were to put together 100, there's no discussion. So, but 50 is a finishing move, right? Laying out 50 references is a finishing move. But I thought that, I may circle back on this series and add to it and try to get it up to 100. So just an FYI. All right. So this particular reference speaks to, I'm just pointing out that the Jews here were placed on the west coast of Africa. So it says the northern coast of Africa and the inhabitable regions inland were full of Jews of Spanish descent. Notice here it says Spanish descent, but in our previous reference, it was, I think, 2 references back, it said Portuguese Jews, right? And again, there's a reason for that. It's because the Spanish Jews were exiled and they moved into Portugal, and then King John expelled those Spanish Jews from Portugal and sent them to Africa. So, and that's where that comes from. But here, I'm just calling out that these Jews were on the west coast of Africa and that they were there in great numbers. So let's read this one more time. It says, the northern coast of Africa and the inhabitable regions inland were full of Jews of Spanish descent. They had congregated there in great numbers during the century from the persecution of 1391 to their total expulsion, which was covered in some other references in a previous series. All right, so let's leave that reference alone and let's go over to our next reference, this is an interesting one by Benedict Spinoza. Now, Benedict Spinoza is a Jew himself. So what better reference than to have a Jew describe himself, his own race, right? So this is Benedict Spinoza, and it says he was, and this is a description of the Jew. It says he was of a middle size. He had good features in his face. The skin somewhat black. Black curly hair, long eyebrows, and of the same color, so that one might easily know by his looks that he was descended from Portuguese Jews. Just make sure that we understand what we just read. It says, the skin somewhat black curly hair, long eyebrows, and of the same color, so that one might easily know by his looks that he was descended from the Portuguese Jews. So the takeaway here is that their understanding back then was the black-skinned person was a Jew. Like when they looked at the black-skinned person, they could look at him and tell, oh, that's a Portuguese Jew just by the way that he looks. And also for reference, this one comes from a book from Ronald Sanders' Lost Tribes. This is one of those things where you have a quote of a quote, and this is also I'm also breaking our rules, so to speak. And this is from a book that was published back in the late or the early 1900s. This one I put this one in just because it has some good info. But this is from you see it on the screen there, Dr. Alan Godby from Duke University. And so he actually publishes a picture of the Jews on the west coast of Africa. And you can see if we read the little blurb at the bottom where it says, Judean Hebrews from Upper Senegal, West Africa. It says, these men are the descendants of the ancient Judean nation. Their ancestors fled from Jerusalem before the arrival of the Roman armies, which were under the command of Vespasian and General Titus in 70 AD. Then as you can tell, the ethnicity of the Jews here are what we would call today as the black man. All right? So that's an interesting reference here because it actually has a picture. And of course, a picture is worth 1,000 words. Okay, all right. So let's go on to our next reference here is the Nautical Magazine. You can see the full title off to the left. And for this one has a couple of sections. So I'm going to, let's see, am I going to read this whole thing? I guess so. Let's start here at the top, the red square here. It says, the inhabitants of Luango do not differ materially from those of Gabon and Cape Lopez. It is probable that the Jewish type of character above mentioned forms a large element of the population there than it does on the Pongo coast. And this, it was doubtless which led the Roman Catholic missionaries who were there, who labored here during the 16th and 17th centuries, to the conclusion that they had found black Jews in Luango. And just to reiterate here, it says, to the conclusion that they had found black Jews in Luango. Jumping out to the next paragraph where it says, Barbert states that in the reign of King John II, again, so what you'll notice is that the common denominator here is you'll see a lot of references to King John. And a lot of things went down during the reign of King John that happened to the Jews. So just an FYI. But it says, and about the close of the 15th century, it says large numbers of Jews were expelled from Portugal and taken to the coast of southern Guinea. And if you don't know, that's the west coast of Africa. So again, this is just yet another reference that points out the fact that large numbers of Jews were expelled from Portugal and taken to the coast of southern Guinea. So that's where all these black Portuguese Jews were taken from. Okay. Now I'm not going to read the rest of it. You can read the rest of it there. Although there is some good information here where it talks about. I actually just talked myself into reading it here. It says, let's see, it is possible that the Jewish type of character noticed at the Gabon and Luango may have originated from this source. It says, but if so, it is unknown to the present inhabitants of the country, and it would have been somewhat singular if the Roman Catholic missionaries at Luango had not detected this circumstance, instead of regarding them as a pure African family of Jews. So I know I skipped some here, but it says the Roman Catholic missionaries regarded these Jews as a pure African family of Jews. Okay, all right, so on to our next quote. Okay, so we have two here, and on the left is page 79. It reads, descended from one common stock and prohibited by the most sacred institution from intermarrying with people of other nations, and yet dispersed according to the divine prediction into every country on the globe. This one people is marked with the colors of all: fair in Britain and Germany, brown in France and Turkey, swarthy, which means that's dark black, blue black, in Portugal and in Spain, olive in Syria and Chaldea, tawny and copper colored in Arabia and in Egypt, whilst they are black at Congo in Africa. Let's keep reading. It says the old colony, I'm on the right hand side on page 80, it says the old colony are the black Jews and have been longer subjected to the influence of climate. The hair of the black Jews are curly, showing a resemblance to the Negro. The white Jews are as dark as the gypsies, and each generation growing darker. All right, so we'll get into these different divisions of Jews, so to speak, in the next series. But the point in this first half is pointing out that the Portuguese and the Spanish Jews were black Jews, and these, in fact, were the ones that were part of the transatlantic slave trade. So that when you go to these YouTube sites and you hear about the Hebrew Israelites, or some folks say that the black Hebrew Israelites, and you hear people out there that would refute that and say there's no way that the Jews could be black. They could be anything but black. This totally blows that assertion out of the water. Okay, all right. So on to our next quote. You'll see it there, Tribute for the Negro. I'll read the whole title there. And on this one's interesting. It's from William Armistead, and this was from page 66. And let's see, where should I start from here? Let's see, I guess I can start to read the whole thing. It says, according to several accurately informed scientific writers, such as Waddington or Dr. Ruppel and Mr. Rosette, there are black races in Africa among the genuine descendants of immigrants from Arabia. Detachments of the Arabian family immigrated, 11 or 1200 years ago, into northern Africa, where they have founded states of some importance, and in some instances they have passed into perfectly black complexion. That's the blue black. Although improved in form and stature, and notwithstanding that they reside to the north of the Negro countries. It says, a remarkable fact in the country of Luango, in the empire of Congo, is that the country, according to a statement which was fully credited by Oldendorp, himself a writer of most correct judgment and of unimpeachable veracity, contains many Jews settled in it, who retain their religious rights and distinct habits which keep them isolated from other nations. Though thus separate from the African population, they are black. You get that? They are black. And these are, and just to kind of paraphrase what the above paragraph said, it talked about the writers, or these scientific writers, that they were of unimpeachable veracity. So these were upstanding guys, is basically what it was saying. But if we keep reading, it says, let's see, where I leave off. It says, they are black and resemble the other Negroes in every respect as to physical character. It says, it is probably in allusion to this case that Pennington, another writer, in his textbook says, the descendants of a colony of Jews, originally from Judea, settled on the coast of Africa, are black. Get that? They are black. All right. So I think you starting to develop a pattern here. You can see that these Jews were in fact called black Jews, and they were recognized as black Jews. And on your screen, this is just another view of the reference. In the previous page, I actually typed it up from here, but this is the actual reference here. And just a quick note here, at the very bottom, you'll see another box, but it says, the Portuguese who planted themselves on the coast of Africa a few centuries ago have been succeeded by descendants blacker than many Africans. So basically, when those Portuguese Jews got to Africa, what they're saying is that they became blacker or darker. Their descendants, their kids, and their children's children became darker over time. So that's why you have the different colors of Jews. Okay, so on to our next reference, and this is an interesting one, the narrative travels and discoveries in the northern and central Africa. So this is basically a journal. So we're going to read a journal entry from a guy that went to the west coast of Africa, and he's having a conversation, I believe it's with a sheik, a sheik on the west coast of Africa. And in this journal, this is what he wrote down, the conversation with, or sounded like it. This is at the bottom of the page. It says, "I have bought a sheep for $1, a coin with which he was not conversant. And he asked if it were true that they came out of the earth." So this is the explorer talking. It says, "The explanation pleased him." Now the sheik is getting ready to speak. He says, "You are not Jews?" said he. "No," said I. "Christian then?" "Even so." Even so means yes. Replied I. "I have read of you. You are better than Jews," said he. "Are Jews white like you?" "No," replied I. And I'm just going to say that again. "No," replied I. "Rather more like yourself. Very dark." "Really?" said the sheik. Yeah, it's funny because that's what a lot of people say today when you tell them that the Jews are black and not white. They say, "Really?" So the sheik had the same reaction. So the sheik says, "Really?" said the sheik. "Why are they not quite white?" And then the explorer says, "They are a bad people." You got that? So just to read it one more time, it says, the next place it says, "You are not Jews?" said he. "No," said I. "Christian then?" "Even so," which means yes, replied I. "I have read of you. You are better than Jews," said he. "Are Jews white like you?" "No," replied I. "Rather more like yourself. Very dark." "Really?" said the sheik. "Why are they not quite white?" "They are a bad people." Now, the interesting thing about this quote is that this is totally opposite of the identity of the Jews today. If you were to explain or describe a Jew, most people would describe the opposite of what this reference says. And that's where I said at the top of the video that the references, like the old references, this is the narrative that you'll find. You'll find that the old references talk about the Jews being black or very dark. But the new references speak to the present day Jews, and it describes them as Europeans or white. So our preference is obviously to use the older books because, of course, the older books were closer to the Jews. So that's that. Let's go to our next reference here. So it reads, "History." This is an interesting one. "History of the White Race, Volume 2." And I hope that as we're going through these references that you're coming across references that you've never seen before. These are references that are readily available, and some of them are hard to find. But these are references that are out there that pretty much anyone can get, download, search for them, that sort of thing. But not a lot of people have seen these references. These aren't references that are in mainstream, that I would say. So let's go ahead and read this one. I'm going to start at the second paragraph, and it says, "A number of Jews went out along Turkey and settled in Rome itself, while a small number settled in Gaul and France. The Jews who went north and eventually west into Europe intermixed with many local white tribes along the way, to the point where today the Jews as a racial group are very diverse, with some being very white and others still showing, I'm going to read this one slow, and others still showing distinct dark Semitic traits. Did you get that? And others still showing distinct dark Semitic traits. So what's a Semitic trait? Dark. Okay? And if we keep reading, it says, "However, not all Jews went north. A significant portion of Jews went west along North African coast. along the North African coast, setting up Jewish communities all the way to Tunisia and finally crossing into southern Spain. So we talked about Spain earlier. Ashkenazim says the Jews who went into Europe via the east absorbed a substantial amount of European blood. They became the Ashkenazim, or European Jews. Those who settled in North Africa became known as the Sephardim. It says this division in Jewry exists to this day and is most marked in Israel, where the two communities. It says the Ashkenazim, or light Jews, it says, and the Sephardim, or dark Jews, and it reads, dark because they did not mix with the number of Europeans that the Ashkenazim did. Okay, let's read that again. It says dark because they did not mix with the number of Europeans that the Ashkenazim did. Okay, so that's a good reference showing you the traits of a Semitic people and the traits of a European people. Now, another thing to note here is that this particular reference hypothesized that the reason why certain Jews lightened up was because of the intermixture with the European Jews. And there's a caveat there because what we mentioned in a previous video was that you have to understand that the Jews during the time of John Hyrcanus, and this was a time period between the Old Testament and the New Testament, there was a lot of history there that's not going over in the Christian churches today. So during that time period, there was the Greek captivity, and then, of course, the Roman captivity followed on his heels. But during the Greek captivity, the Edomites were forcefully converted over to Judaism. And according to Josephus, the Edomites also became Jews as well. So you not only had the ancient Jews, but then you also had another group of Jews called Edomite Jews. So you had two Jews. Then later on, you also had the Khazarian Jews. At the end of the day, you had the ancient Jews, the original Jews, then you had the Edomite Jews, and then you had these other Jews. So as you're reading, you always have to in the back of your mind, figure out like which group of Jews are they talking about? Like which group of Jews does this particular reference speak to? Okay, so you have to have that history when you're doing this research, or you could get lost. Okay. All right, so let's go over to our next reference, and this is a good one. This is one that I've shared previously in other videos, but it says this is The Negro in the New World by Harry Johnston. And on this one, it says in the footnote, this is where it says, the Jews are composed of 3 or 4 separate racial elements. The Asiatic Negroid strain. So those of you that are out there that would say that, all right, so maybe the Jews are dark. Okay, I'll give you that. That doesn't mean that they're black, right? You might say that doesn't mean that they're black as in the African American black. Well, this reference speaks to that as well. Okay, so not only what we're saying is not only were they dark-skinned people, but they were also considered Negroid people as well. Okay, so let's read this. It says the Jews are composed of 3 or 4 separate racial elements. The Asiatic Negroid strain shows itself occasionally in the curly hair, the long eye, and the proportion of the skull. The Jewish hybrids with the Negro in Jamaica and Guiana reproduce most strikingly the Assyrian type. So the takeaway here is that the Jews were considered Negroid. Okay? All right, so let's go over to our next quote. This too is a good one on the classification and geographic distribution of mammalia. Let's go over to page 96 and 97. And here it reads, I'm going to start at the very top. It says, with reference to characteristic of color, which are extreme, we have now opportunities of knowing how much that character is the result of the influence of climate. So back in the day, they used to think that climate affected whether a person was light or dark or white or black, that sort of thing. Yeah. We know it more particularly by the most valuable mode of testing such influences, which we derive from the peculiarity of the Jewish race. It says, for 1800 years, that race has been dispersed in different latitudes and climates, and they have preserved themselves distinct from intermixture with other races of mankind. There are some Jews still lingering in the valleys of the Jordan, having been oppressed by the successive conquerors of Syria for ages. A low race of people, and described by trustworthy travelers as being as black as any of the Ethiopian races. You get that? All right, let me just read that again. It says, a low race of people, and described by trustworthy travelers. By trustworthy travelers, all right, you got that? As being as black as any of the Ethiopian races. Okay? So this is their understanding of the Jews. But let's keep reading on so we get some additional understanding, because he's going to describe some other Jews. So it says, others of the Jewish people participating in the European civilization. And if you remember in a couple of previous quotes, we read about Jews migrating to Europe, right? And about them intermarrying with the Europeans and lightening up. Well, let's see what this says. It says, others of the Jewish people participating in European civilization and dwelling in the northern nations show instances, not the whole, but it says show instances of the light complexion, the blue eyes, and the light hair of the Scandinavian families. Then it goes on to say, the condition of the Hebrews since their dispersion has not been such as to admit of much admixture by the prostitution of household slaves. So basically it's saying that, the Jews don't normally mix with other races. It says, we are thus led to account for the differences in color by the influence of climate without having to refer them to original or specific distinctions. So in other words, it's saying that they're left to hypothesize that the differences in color are due to climate. The differences in the color of the Jews are due to climate. Okay, all right. So that's a good reference. Our next reference just speaks to the Mavambo Jews, where it says, using my cursor here, it says the Mavambo Jews are known to Europeans as black Jews. Okay, on account of their Semitic features. You got it? Okay. So I hope by now you can see that reference after reference after reference are pretty much saying the same thing. Okay. All right. And let's go over to Gene Barbett. If I remember correctly, I think Gene Barbett, what he did was that he gathered information from ship captains that were going over to the west coast of Africa. So he compiled all of their information to come up with his information. But it says, Barbett concludes that the blackness must be in the blood or race, adding the curious proof that Portuguese Jews resemble other Portuguese and Germans. Let me read that again. It says blackness must be in the blood or race, adding the curious proof. So the proof of the blackness is that the Portuguese Jews resemble other Portuguese and Germans. So not only were the Portuguese black, but the Germans were black. What we can take from here is that the race of the Jews as a whole were considered black. And I added this snippet in here where it just says the omission of one paragraph describing how the island was settled by deported Spanish Jews and black women from Angola. So again, if you're noticing, some references say Spanish Jews were deported to the west coast of Africa, whereas other references are pointing out that Portuguese Jews were exiled to Africa, and they're both correct. I just want to point out that they're both correct. It's just that the Spanish Jews, just to reiterate, Spanish Jews were exiled, and then they migrated into Portugal. And once they got into Portugal, that's where King John, our favorite king in these books here, King John took those Spanish Jews and then dumped them on the west coast of Africa. So that's why you see some of them refer to them as Spanish Jews, some are referred to as Portuguese Jews. But at least now you understand why certain people were called Negroes, which is the Spanish word for black, right? Because these were black Portuguese Jews, but they're actually Spanish Jews, so they're Negroes. They're the Spanish word for black. All All right, so let's go over to our next reference, and you can see the reference there. Kind of combined several on this slide just to keep things compact. And it says, a fact worthy the attention of travelers is that according to Oldendorp, the kingdom of Luango contains black Jews scattered throughout the country. They are despised by the Negroes who do not even deign to eat with them. They are occupied in trade and keep the Sabbath so strictly that they do not even converse on that day. They have a separate burying ground very far from any habitation. The tombs are constructed with masonry and ornamented with Hebrew inscriptions, the singularity of which excites the laughter of the Negroes, who discern in them only serpents and lizards and other reptiles. All right, so in our next quote down, it says, by J.C. Picard, it says, the Portuguese Jews are very dark. It's consistent with what we've read so far. And even Waits, in his book, he writes, an interesting gradation of all shades down to the black is exhibited by the Jews. Especially dark were the Jews of Spain and Portugal. So again, the Jews in Spain and Portugal were dark, and they were especially dark according to Waits. Okay, all right. So we're establishing a pattern of black Jews, of dark Jews, especially of Portugal and Spain, and we're seeing reference after reference prove this fact out. So let's read some more. In this next reference, under the picture here, this is from Yosef ben Nathan, and it reads, why are the majority of Gentiles white and attractive, while the majority of Jews are black and ugly? Okay? Insult, he's kind of, I guess it's meant to insult the Jews, but by insulting the Jews, he's actually providing some information for us today that these Jews are black, right? All right, so let's go to the next reference on this one. It's at the bottom of your screen there, and this is also from a Jew, right? So this is can't get any better than a Jew describing his own people, right? So it says, we Jews, so he's counting himself as a Jew, right? So he's saying, we Jews are from a clean and white seed. Therefore, our faces are black. But you, from the red seed of menstruation, therefore your visages are pale and reddened. Let's read that one more time. Just make sure we understood what we read. It says, we Jews. So this is a Jew describing himself, right? He's describing his nation. It says, we Jews are from a clean and white seed, therefore our faces are black. But you, from the red seed of menstruation, therefore your visages are pale and reddened. All right. So once again, this is pointing out the Jews are black. And let's go to our next quote. It says, this is from Spanish Benedict Monk, where he says, for if 1,000 times they are with white women, their children are born with the dark skin of their parents. Okay. And then if we go over to John Mackey, this is a good one. And that, the previous one was from 1606. This one's from 1733. And it reads, Earl of Nottingham, Secretary of State, is eldest son to Mr. Fitch, Lord Chancellor in the reign of King Charles II. This gentleman never made any considerable figure till the Revolution, when he zealously opposed King William's coming to the throne, yet was made Secretary of State by the Prince. He had also the exterior air of business, an application enough to make himself capable. In his habit and manners, very formal, a tall, thin, very black man, like a Spaniard or a Jew about 50 years old. You got it? A tall, thin, very black man, like a Spaniard or a Jew about 50 years old. Okay, so on to Francis Maximilian. So Francis Maximilian also has an interesting quote here where he says, "'Tis also a vulgar error," he wrote, "that the Jews are all black." So you can see that back in the day, most people were thinking that the Jews were all black, but Francis is Maximilian is saying, no, it's not. They're not all black. But let's listen. He says, "'Tis vulgar error also," he wrote, "that the Jews are all black." He says, "For this is only true of the Portuguese," what we read before, right? "Of the Portuguese who marrying always among one another." So they married among themselves, begat children like themselves. So in other words, Francis is saying that they're not mixing, so they're retaining their color. And it says, "And consequently the swarthiness," which means blackness, or the blackness of their complexion, "is entailed upon their whole race, even in the northern region." So that's a very good quote. And let's go to our next one where it says, "It is evident to me that the Jews bear the sign of their fatherland, the Orient. Throughout the world, their short, black, curly hair, their brown skin, their rapid speech, their brisk and precipitous actions also come from this source. I believe that the Jews have more gall than other people." And okay, so their brown skin. So you got that in that second one. And then I'm going to jump down to the bottom of the next one here, where it says, "There is no category of supposed human beings which come closer to the orangutan than does a Polish Jew, covered from foot to head in filth, dirt, and rags, covered in a type of black sack. Their necks expose the color of a black. Their faces covered up to the eyes, which with a beard, which would have given the high priest in the temple chills. The hair turned and knotted." So this reference is a good reference that speaks to the hair texture of the Jews, because maybe up to this point you may be conceding that at the very least these Jews were black, but maybe in the back of your mind you're saying, well, that doesn't mean that they had black hair, right? That didn't mean that they were totally Negro. But as we see here, it says the hair turned and knotted. And if you know anything about the hair of the so-called African American, you'll know that the hair turns and it knots. All right, so let's wrap this first video up here with a reference from Robert Knox, and this is a good one. So it's Robert Knox, and that's the book here. This book was written in 1850. And so this first one comes from page 133. This first reference comes from 133. And it says, I'm going to start at the top. It says, "As I attentively surveyed the Jewish population on the streets of London." So he's getting ready to tell you about the Jews in London. He says, "I fancied I could perceive three different cast of features." He says, "The first, Jewish, par excellence, and never to be mistaken. The second, such as a Rembrandt drew. And a third, possibly darker, of the other races intermingled." So he's saying that there's three different casts of features. The first, Jewish, right? So remember, the first, Jewish. I'm reiterating that for a point. The first, Jewish. It says, "It seems to me, indeed, that almost every race shows, as it were, three forms of race which run into each other, connecting them possibly with others, so that this is not peculiar to the Jewish race." It says, "Of the first form," which is the Jewish form, it says, "Of the first form, I need say little to you, begging you merely to recollect, to remember," and he's going to describe them. He says, "that the contour is convex, the eyes long and fine, the angles running towards the temples, the brow and the nose apt to form a single convex line, the nose comparatively narrow at the base, the eyes consequently approaching each other." He says, "Lips," this is where you need to tune in, "the lips very full." So who has full lips today? "Lips very full, mouth projecting, chin small." He says, "and the whole physiognomy," he said, in other words, the way they look, "when swarthy or when black, as it often is, has an African look." Now I need to read that again. It says, "and the whole physiognomy," the way they look, when swarthy or when black, he says, as it often is. So they're often black, right? It says has an African look. Okay, so that's an interesting quote by Robert Knox. He basically says that these Jews look African. Okay, so these Jews look African, or basically these Jews look Negro, like Negroes. All right, and this is the last reference. I thought this would be an interesting one to throw in there, where it talks about race. It says the dark races of men, and this comes from page 153. And we're going to close on this one, and it says, but who are the dark races of ancient and modern times? It would not be easy to answer this question. Let me just start it over. It says, but who are the dark races of ancient and modern times? It would not be easy to answer this question. It says, were the Copts or the Egyptians a dark race? Are the Jews a dark race? The Gypsies, the Chinese, etc.? Dark they are. Dark they are, to a certain extent. So are all the Mongol tribes, the American Indians. If you know, seeing pictures of the American Indians, they were dark. I mean, they were brown, dark brown. It says, and the Eskimo. It says, the inhabitants of nearly all Africa. So we know all Africa is dark too, right? It says, the east of Australia. So I thought this would be interesting to throw in, where he talks about the races of men of the ancient and modern times in general. It says, but who are the dark races of ancient and modern times? It would not be easy to answer this question. It says, were the Copts or the Egyptians a dark race? Yeah. It says, are the Jews a dark race? Yeah. The Gypsies? Yeah. The Chinese? Yeah. And it says, then he answers the question. He says, dark they are, to a certain extent. And then he goes on and then mentions the American Indians and the Eskimos in Africa and stuff like that. So anyway, but that's a good reference to close this out with. So hopefully, up to now, you've gotten a lot of information about and a good understanding about the black Jews, the Jews being black, and that now you can see that it's not just like one or two references, right, that point out the fact that the Jews were black or dark. But there's several references, and like I said, at the end of this series, we're gonna hit 50. That's our goal. I've counted, so I know I have at least 50. I got more than 50 actually, but we're gonna hit 50 in this one, and I may circle back on this one and try to get it up to 100, just to prove a point. Because I think at this point we're kind of tired of the back and forth with folks saying that Jews look this way or they look that way, and I think that misunderstanding really boils down to reading. Not a lot of us are taking the time to read books from the ancient times, from books that were from the 1800s or older. I think they're grabbing hold of these books that are from the 1900s or newer, which are giving a total spin of history, different spin of history than the one that was given many years before. All right, so let's go ahead and end this one. Stay tuned. I hope to follow the follow-up video, part 2, shortly thereafter. And thanks again for watching. If you have time, go ahead and click on subscribe so you can get a notification on the next video. And have a great day, and shalom.